Woman spends 10 minutes in heaven. Her revelation will leave you speechless. NDE. The gentle hum of the hospital machinery was the only sound in the room. Sophia lay on the bed, her chest rising and falling with shallow, labored breaths. At 54, she hadn't expected to be here, not so soon. She had lived a modest life, working tirelessly to provide for her 2 daughters after her husband's untimely death. But now, a sudden cardiac arrest had left her hovering between life and death. Her daughters, Emily and Grace, stood beside her bed, their faces pale and strained with worry. Emily whispered a quiet prayer while Grace held Sophia's hand tightly, as if willing her mother to stay. Sophia's eyes fluttered open briefly, her lips moving as if to speak, but no words came. Then, with a sharp intake of breath, her body went still. Sophia felt a strange weightlessness, as if she had been released from the heaviness of her body. The pain, the exhaustion, the fear, they were gone. She opened her eyes and found herself standing in a field that seemed to stretch endlessly. The air was filled with a warmth that was neither hot nor cold, but perfect, wrapping around her like a comforting embrace. The sky above her shimmered with colors she had never seen before, hues that seemed alive. "Where am I?" she murmured, her voice steady yet filled with wonder. "You are in a place between," a gentle voice replied. Sophia turned to see a figure standing a few feet away. The figure radiated light, but not in a blinding way. It was soft, inviting, and carried a profound sense of peace. Though the figure's features were indistinct, Sophia felt no fear, only an overwhelming sense of familiarity. "Am I dead?" Sophia asked. "You have left your earthly body," the figure said, its voice calm and melodic. "But your journey is not yet complete. There are things you must see." Sophia nodded, her heart steady despite the magnitude of the moment. "What things?" "Truths," the figure said simply. "About yourself, about your world, and about what lies beyond." The field around Sophia began to shift. The grass beneath her feet shimmered, and the horizon seemed to stretch further. She noticed golden threads weaving through the landscape, connecting everything: the trees, the flowers, even the air itself. The threads pulsed with light, each one alive with energy. "These threads," Sophia said, her voice tinged with awe. "What are they?" "They are the connections that bind all things," the figure replied. "They are formed by love, by intention, by the choices that align with truth. They sustain the fabric of existence." Sophia stepped forward, reaching out to touch one of the threads. The moment her fingers made contact, a surge of warmth coursed through her, and a vision unfolded before her eyes. She saw herself as a young woman, standing in the kitchen of her childhood home. Her mother was at the stove, humming a tune as she cooked. Sophia remembered this moment. It was the day her father had left them, walking out the door without a word. She had been only 8 years old, confused and heartbroken. In the vision, her mother turned to her, kneeling down to wipe the tears from Sophia's cheeks. "We're going to be okay," her mother had said, her voice steady despite the pain in her eyes. "We have each other." Sophia felt tears well up as the memory played out. She had forgotten how much strength her mother had shown, how her words had comforted her in that moment. The golden thread connecting her to her mother pulsed brightly, a testament to the bond they had shared. "Every act of love strengthens the threads," the figure said. "Even in moments of pain, connection brings light." The vision shifted, and Sophia saw another memory, this time of herself as a young mother. She was sitting at the edge of her daughter's bed, reading them a bedtime story. Emily and Grace listened intently, their laughter filling the room as Sophia made funny voices for the characters. The thread connecting her to her daughters glowed warmly, weaving into the threads of their future. "This is what love creates," the figure said. "A legacy of connection that ripples outward." Sophia smiled, her heart swelling with pride and gratitude. But as the vision faded, she noticed another thread nearby, one that was dim and frayed. She followed it with her eyes and saw a moment she had tried to forget. It was a memory of an argument with her younger sister, Lisa. They had fought over their late mother's belongings, each accusing the other of selfishness. The words they had exchanged were sharp and painful, and neither had spoken since. The thread connecting them was weak, its light barely visible. "This is what happens when love is overshadowed by pride," the figure said. "The connection remains, but it is fragile." Sophia's chest tightened. "I wanted to reach out," she said softly, "but I didn't know how." "It is not too late," the figure said. "The threads can be mended, but it requires intention. Love must be chosen, even when it is difficult." The landscape around them shimmered, and Sophia found herself back in the field. The golden threads continued to pulse, weaving a tapestry that seemed infinite. She turned to the figure, her voice steady. "Why are you showing me this?" "To help you see," the figure said. "Your life is not a series of disconnected moments. It is a tapestry woven with the threads of your choices. Every action, every word, every thought adds to its design." Sophia nodded, her mind racing. She thought of the times she had chosen love and the times she had allowed fear or anger to guide her. She realized now that each choice, no matter how small, had left its mark on the tapestry of her life. The threads began to glow brighter, and the figure stepped closer. "There is more to see," it said, "but the truths you carry from here must guide you forward. Your journey is far from over." Sophia felt a surge of anticipation as the field around her began to shift again. She didn't know what awaited her, but she was ready to face it, with open eyes, an open heart, and a newfound understanding of the power of love. The field around Sophia shimmered as the golden threads began to shift, their gentle pulsing growing more pronounced. The air seemed alive, humming with energy as the threads wove intricate patterns that stretched beyond what her eyes could see. Sophia felt drawn forward, her steps light as though she was gliding. The figure followed beside her, its presence steady and reassuring. "What do the threads mean for us?" Sophia asked, her voice filled with curiosity. "Are they just a reflection, or are they something we can influence?" "They are both," the figure replied. "The threads are the bonds formed by love, intention, and action. They reflect the choices you have made, but they are not fixed. Every moment offers a chance to strengthen or repair them." Sophia reached out to touch a thread, and a vision unfolded before her. She saw herself sitting in a small cafe, a cup of coffee in her hands. Across from her sat a man she didn't recognize at first. His suit was wrinkled, his eyes tired, but he smiled faintly as he spoke. It was only when the vision sharpened that she realized it was her late husband, Mark. The memory rushed back to her. It was their first date, a quiet afternoon filled with nervous laughter and hesitant conversation. Sophia watched as Mark leaned forward, confessing his worries about being good enough for her. In that moment, she had reached out and placed her hand on his, reassuring him with a smile. The thread connecting them pulsed brightly, weaving into the fabric of the tapestry around them. "This moment was small," the figure said, "but it set the foundation for a bond that shaped both of your lives." Sophia felt a pang of longing as the memory faded. "I didn't realize how much those little moments mattered." "They are the most important," the figure said. "It is not grand gestures but consistent choices of love that build the strongest threads." The vision shifted, showing another scene. This time, it was Sophia at her desk, late at night, grading papers. She looked exhausted, her brow furrowed in concentration. A faint sound caught her attention, and she turned to see Grace standing in the doorway, clutching a stuffed bear. "Mom, can I talk to you?" Grace had asked, her voice timid. Sophia remembered this night. She had been stressed about meeting a deadline and had almost told Grace to go back to bed. But something in her daughter's eyes had stopped her. She had set down her pen, opened her arms, and invited Grace onto her lap. The thread connecting them glowed as the vision played out. Grace talked about a fight she'd had with her sister, her small voice trembling with worry. Sophia had listened, offering reassurance and a hug. The tension in Grace's face melted away, replaced by a smile. "This is the power of presence," the figure said. "Even in moments of personal difficulty, choosing connection strengthens the threads." Sophia watched as the light from their threads spread outward, weaving into Grace's future. She saw Grace as an adult, comforting a friend who had just lost a loved one, her compassion rooted in the lessons Sophia had taught her. The threads around them began to dim slightly, and Sophia noticed a tangled section nearby. She moved closer, her chest tightening as a new vision emerged. This time, she saw herself in the midst of an argument with Emily. They were in the living room, voices raised, their words cutting and sharp. "I was just trying to help," Emily had shouted, her face flushed with frustration. "You're always interfering," Sophia had snapped, her tone harsher than she intended. "Why can't you trust me to handle things?" Sophia watched as the thread connecting them dimmed, its light flickering weakly. Emily turned and left the room, slamming the door behind her. The shadows that crept into the thread lingered, their presence heavy and foreboding. "This is what happens when pride overshadows love," the figure said. "The connection remains, but it is weakened." Sophia's chest ached as the memory played out. She had regretted those words almost immediately but had let the silence between them stretch on, too stubborn to apologize. The thread had remained fragile, a reminder of the rift she hadn't mended. The figure gestured, and the scene shifted again. Sophia saw Emily sitting alone in her car, tears streaming down her face. She was clutching her phone, her finger hovering over Sophia's number. After a long pause, she sighed and put the phone down, the thread between them dimming further. "Even when the connection is weak, it is never lost," the figure said. "But it takes courage to repair it." Sophia nodded, her resolve growing. "I didn't see it this way before. I didn't realize how much my choices could hurt or heal." "That is why you are here," the figure said. "To see, to understand, and to carry this truth forward." The threads around them pulsed again, drawing Sophia's attention to another vision. This time, she saw a stranger, a man sitting on a park bench, his shoulders slumped. His thread was faint, barely visible, and no one around him seemed to notice. Sophia watched as a woman passed by, glancing at the man before hesitating. She turned back, offering him a bottle of water and a kind word. The man's thread flickered, then glowed faintly, the light spreading outward as he sat up straighter, a small smile on his face. "That wasn't me," Sophia said, confused. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because this is what happens when someone chooses love," the figure said. "The threads you strengthen inspire others to do the same. The ripple of one act can touch countless lives." Sophia felt a surge of hope as the vision faded. She thought of the times she had acted with kindness and the times she had let opportunities slip by. Each choice, she realized, was part of something far greater than she had ever understood. The field around her shimmered, and the threads began to weave into new patterns. Sophia turned to the figure, her voice steady. "If the threads are so fragile, how do we ensure they stay strong?" "By choosing love in every moment," the figure said. "Even when it is difficult, even when it feels small. The threads are resilient when nurtured with intention." Sophia nodded, her mind racing with thoughts of her life, her connections, and the opportunities she had missed. She understood now that every moment mattered, every choice carried weight. "There is more to see," the figure said, its light growing brighter. "But you are beginning to understand. The threads are not just connections. They are a reflection of the love you give and receive." The air around them began to shift, the golden threads glowing with renewed brilliance. Sophia felt a pull toward the next part of her journey, her heart steady with purpose and anticipation. The glowing threads around Sophia began to shift once more, their vibrant hues dimming slightly as the landscape changed. She found herself standing in a vast chamber filled with countless mirrors. Each mirror reflected not her physical appearance but fragmented moments of her life. Some images were vibrant and filled with light, while others were shrouded in shadows. The sight was both mesmerizing and unsettling. "What is this place?" Sophia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "This is the Hall of Unseen Choices," the figure said, its voice gentle but firm. "Here, the effects of your actions and inactions are revealed, even those you were unaware of." Sophia hesitated, her gaze drawn to one of the mirrors. It showed her sitting at a park bench years ago, reading a book. Nearby, a woman was pacing, her face tense with worry as she clutched a phone. Sophia had barely noticed her at the time, engrossed in her own world. The mirror's surface shimmered, and the scene continued to unfold. The woman eventually sat down beside Sophia, tears streaming down her face. She glanced at Sophia, hesitating as though she wanted to speak, but Sophia had remained focused on her book, never looking up. After a few moments, the woman left, her shoulders slumped. Sophia's chest tightened. I didn't realize. I didn't know she needed someone. She didn't ask, the figure said, its tone neutral. But connection doesn't always require words. A glance, a smile, an acknowledgement. These small gestures can strengthen threads even when the need is unspoken. The mirror shifted, and Sophia saw the woman walking home alone, her thread dim and fragile. Shadows swirled around her, and Sophia felt a pang of regret. If I'd just said something, anything, it could have made a difference. Yes, the figure said, but the thread remains. While some opportunities pass, others will arise. Each moment offers a new choice. Sophia turned to another mirror. This one showed a different moment, her standing in line at a grocery store, an older man fumbling with his wallet as the cashier waited impatiently. She remembered the incident now, how she'd felt a flicker of frustration but had resisted the urge to say anything. The mirror revealed what happened next. Another customer in line sighed loudly, muttering under their breath. The older man's thread dimmed as he hurriedly gathered his things and left the store, his face flushed with embarrassment. Sophia stepped closer to the mirror, her throat tight. I didn't contribute to that, did I? I didn't say anything. Silence is a choice, the figure said. Inaction can feed the shadows as much as action can strengthen the light. Sophia's mind raced as she thought of the countless times she had chosen silence or indifference, assuming her actions, or lack thereof, were inconsequential. How do we know what to do in those moments? She asked. How do we know what the right choice is? The heart knows, the figure said simply. But fear often silences it. Fear of judgment, of rejection, of failure. To choose love requires courage. The mirrors began to glow, and a new scene emerged. This time, Sophia saw a moment she hadn't thought about in years. She was visiting a hospital to see a friend who had just given birth. As she walked down the hallway, she noticed an elderly man sitting alone in a waiting area. He looked lost, his hands trembling as he stared at the floor. Sophia remembered how she had hesitated, torn between going to her friend's room and stopping to check on the man. In the memory, she chose to keep walking, convincing herself that someone else would help him. The mirror showed what happened after she left. The man continued to sit there, his thread dim and fragile. A nurse eventually approached him, offering a kind word and a cup of water. His thread brightened slightly, but it remained weak. Sophia felt a pang of guilt. If I'd stopped, could I have helped more? You could have, the figure said. But you are not alone in carrying the burden of connection. The nurse's kindness strengthened his thread, just as yours could have. The web is not woven by one person but by many. Sophia nodded, her mind heavy with the weight of her realizations. It's not just about what we do, it's about what we don't do, isn't it? Yes, the figure said. Every choice, no matter how small, contributes to the whole. The mirrors shimmered, and a brighter scene unfolded. This time, Sophia saw herself standing outside a library, holding a stack of books. A young boy approached her, asking for directions to a nearby store. She remembered this moment vividly, how she had smiled, crouched down to his level, and given him clear instructions. The boy's thread pulsed brightly in the mirror, and Sophia watched as the light spread outward. The scene shifted to show the boy years later, volunteering at a community center, his actions inspiring others to give back. Sophia felt a warmth in her chest. That one small moment, did it really make that much of a difference? It did, the figure said. Kindness, no matter how small, creates ripples. The threads you strengthen touch lives far beyond your own. The mirror shifted again, showing a new scene. This time, it was Emily and Grace's children, sitting on the floor of their bedroom. Sophia stood in the doorway, her arms crossed as she watched them argue over a toy. She remembered how she had stepped in, teaching them to share and to value each other's feelings. Their threads glowed brightly in the mirror, weaving into the threads of others they would encounter in their lives. Grace's compassion as a doctor, Emily's dedication as a teacher, all of it was connected to the lessons Sophia had instilled in them. Sophia turned away from the mirrors, her heart heavy with both pride and regret. "I see now how much every moment matters," she said. "But how do we carry that knowledge without being overwhelmed by it?" "By understanding that perfection is not required," the figure said. "The threads are resilient. What matters is intention. Each day is an opportunity to choose love, to repair what has been frayed, to strengthen what is weak." Sophia nodded, her resolve growing. She thought of the times she had let fear or indifference guide her actions and the moments when she had chosen love despite her own struggles. Each choice had left its mark, weaving into the tapestry of her life. "What happens next?" she asked, her voice steady. "There is more to see," the figure said. "But the truth is becoming clear. Your life is not defined by the moments you missed, but by the love you choose moving forward." The mirrors began to fade, and Sophia felt the space around her shift once more. The threads of light pulsed with renewed energy, guiding her toward the next part of her journey. The mirrors faded, and Sophia found herself standing at the edge of an immense body of water. The surface was perfectly still, reflecting the endless golden sky above. Sophia gazed into the water and saw faint ripples forming, though no wind disturbed the surface. The ripples expanded outward, creating intricate patterns that intertwined and overlapped, each one connected to the next. "What is this place?" Sophia asked, her voice carrying softly across the tranquil expanse. "This is the ripple effect," the figure replied, its presence steady beside her. "Here, the consequences of your choices are revealed, not in isolation, but as part of the greater whole." Sophia took a cautious step forward, her reflection shimmering beneath her. "Every choice creates a ripple?" "Yes," the figure said. "Each action, no matter how small, touches the lives of others. And through them, it touches lives you may never see." The water beneath her began to shift, and Sophia saw a vision forming on the surface. She recognized the scene instantly. It was the day she had helped her neighbor, Mrs. O'Leary, carry her groceries up the stairs. Sophia had been in a rush, running late for an appointment, but she had stopped anyway, sensing the elderly woman's struggle. The vision played out as Sophia remembered it, but this time, the ripple effects extended beyond that moment. She saw Mrs. O'Leary smiling as she reached her apartment, her spirits lifted by the small act of kindness. Later that evening, Mrs. O'Leary called her granddaughter, a conversation she had been too lonely to initiate before. The granddaughter, touched by her grandmother's warmth, decided to visit the next weekend. The ripple spread further. During the visit, Mrs. O'Leary shared old family stories, inspiring her granddaughter to reconnect with other family members she had grown distant from. The connections continued to spread, weaving into lives Sophia would never know. "I had no idea," Sophia said, her voice trembling. "I thought it was just a simple gesture." "There is no such thing as a simple gesture," the figure said. "Every act of love carries the potential to change the world." The water rippled again, revealing another vision. This time, it was a moment Sophia barely remembered. She had been walking to work when she smiled at a stranger passing by. The stranger, a man weighed down by worry, had barely acknowledged her at the time. But now, Sophia saw the ripple that followed. The man, inspired by the brief kindness, had held the door open for someone at a cafe. That person, in turn, paid for the coffee of the next customer in line. The ripple continued, spreading outward in ways both small and profound, touching lives far removed from Sophia's own. "Even something as small as a smile," Sophia murmured. "It can make a difference." "Yes," the figure said. "The light of love spreads through the smallest of acts. It does not require recognition or acknowledgement to have an impact." The ripples shifted, and Sophia saw a darker scene forming on the water's surface. It was the argument she'd had with her friend Rachel years ago. They had been close, but the disagreement, over something trivial in hindsight, had driven a wedge between them. Sophia had been too proud to apologize, and the friendship had faded. She watched as the ripple of that choice played out. Rachel, feeling rejected, withdrew from other friendships as well. Her thread dimmed, and the isolation fed the shadows around her. Sophia's heart ached as she saw how their fractured bond had affected Rachel's life. "Is it too late to repair this?" Sophia asked, her voice heavy with regret. "No thread is beyond repair," the figure said. But it requires intention, courage, and the willingness to act. The choice is always yours. The water rippled again, and Sophia saw another memory, one she had nearly forgotten. It was a day when she had spoken sharply to Grace, scolding her for a mistake during her teenage years. Grace's thread dimmed slightly in the vision, her expression filled with hurt. But then, the scene shifted to show Sophia returning to Grace's room later that night, apologizing for her harsh words and offering reassurance. The ripple of that choice was profound. Grace's thread brightened, and the connection between them strengthened. Later, Sophia saw Grace as an adult, facing a difficult situation with a friend. Instead of reacting with anger, she chose patience and understanding, echoing the lessons Sophia had modeled years before. Sophia felt a wave of relief. Even when we make mistakes, there's hope. Yes, the figure said, redemption lies in the choices that follow. A single act of repair can undo much of the damage caused by fear or pride. The water shifted again, this time revealing a vision of her daughters as children. They were playing in the living room, their laughter filling the air. Sophia entered the room with a tray of cookies, setting it down and joining them on the floor. The memory was vivid, and Sophia felt the warmth of that moment all over again. The ripple from this scene was extraordinary. The love and joy shared in that simple act wove into Emily and Grace's lives, shaping their relationships with others. Sophia saw Emily comforting a friend during a difficult time, and Grace advocating for a patient who felt unheard. Their threads were vibrant, radiating light that spread far and wide. You gave them more than love in that moment, the figure said. You gave them the tools to carry that love forward. Sophia's heart swelled with pride. She realized that the choices she had made, even the ones that seemed insignificant, had left a lasting impact. The water grew still, and Sophia turned to the figure. Every choice matters, she said, her voice steady. Even the ones we don't realize are choices. Yes, the figure said. The ripple effect is constant, shaping the tapestry of existence in ways beyond comprehension. But it is not about perfection, it is about intention. Sophia thought of the moments she had missed, the opportunities she had let slip by. But she also thought of the times she had chosen love, even when it was difficult. Each of those choices had left a mark, creating ripples that would continue long after her life. What happens now? She asked, her gaze returning to the still water. There is more to see, the figure said. But you are beginning to understand. The power of your choices is not limited to what you see. It extends far beyond, touching lives you will never know. The ripples on the water began to glow, their light spreading outward as the scene around Sophia began to shift. She felt a pull toward the next part of her journey, her heart steady with resolve and purpose. The glowing water faded, replaced by a vast, open expanse filled with countless threads stretching into the horizon. Each thread pulsated with a rhythm, as if alive. Some glowed brightly, strong and steady, while others flickered faintly, their light fragile and dim. The sight was both mesmerizing and sobering. This is the threadwork of redemption, the figure said, its voice calm yet resonant. Here, the potential for repair and renewal is woven into the fabric of existence. The threads you see are the lives connected to your own. Sophia stepped forward, her eyes scanning the intricate network of threads. Each one seemed to carry a story, a history of choices, connections, and consequences. She felt a tug on her heart as she noticed a particular thread that seemed familiar. It was faint, its light struggling against encroaching shadows. Who does this thread belong to? Sophia asked, pointing toward it. This thread represents Rachel, the figure replied. Your friend from whom you drifted apart. A vision unfolded in the air before them, showing Sophia and Rachel years ago. They were sitting together in a small cafe, laughing and talking as though nothing in the world could separate them. The memory was warm, filled with light, but it shifted suddenly to the argument that had driven them apart. Sophia watched herself snap at Rachel, her words sharp and unforgiving. Rachel's face fell, her thread dimming visibly. The scene replayed the moment Rachel walked away, the space between their threads widening, filled with shadows. Sophia's chest tightened. I was hurt, but so was she said softly. I could have reached out, but I didn't. I let my pride get in the way. The threads of connection are resilient, the figure said, but they require intention to repair. It is not enough to feel regret, one must act upon it. The vision shifted, showing Rachel in her home, sitting alone by a window. Her expression was distant, her thread barely flickering. But then a faint light appeared in the vision, Sophia picking up her phone, dialing Rachel's number. The connection between their threads began to brighten, the shadows retreating slightly. This is what could be, the figure said. The choice is always yours. Sophia felt a surge of determination. If I could do it over, I would make that call. I would try to mend what was broken. You can, the figure said. The threads of redemption are never beyond reach. The light remains, waiting to be rekindled. Sophia turned her attention to another thread nearby. This one was frayed, its light intermittent. She felt a pang of recognition. It was Grace's thread. A vision appeared, showing a moment from years ago. Grace, then a teenager, sat on the stairs of their home, her face flushed with frustration. Sophia stood nearby, her arms crossed as she delivered a scolding. You need to take responsibility for your actions, Sophia had said, her tone stern. I didn't mean to mess up, Grace had replied, her voice trembling. I just wanted to help. The thread between them dimmed slightly as Grace ran upstairs, her feelings of inadequacy deepening. Sophia remembered this moment vividly. She had been trying to teach Grace a lesson, but in her frustration, she had overlooked her daughter's intentions. I didn't realize how much that hurt her, Sophia said, her voice thick with emotion. I thought I was helping her grow. The threads between loved ones are some of the strongest, the figure said. But even they can be strained by misunderstanding. The vision shifted to later that evening. Sophia knocked on Grace's door, entering with a softer expression. She sat beside her daughter and apologized for her harshness, offering words of encouragement instead. Grace's thread brightened, the connection between them strengthening. You chose to repair it, the figure said. That choice rippled forward. Sophia watched as the vision expanded. Grace, now an adult, was speaking to a young patient at her clinic. The child was upset, their thread dim, but Grace knelt beside them, offering words of comfort and encouragement. The child's thread brightened, the light spreading to their parents nearby. That moment shaped her ability to connect, Sophia said, her voice filled with awe. Every repaired thread strengthens not only the immediate bond but those that follow, the figure said. Your actions teach others how to mend and nurture their own connections. The threads around them pulsed, and another vision appeared. This time, it was a stranger, a man sitting alone on a park bench. Sophia had passed him years ago, noticing his hunched posture and weary expression but choosing not to stop. She remembered the moment, the way she had hesitated before convincing herself she had nothing to offer. What could I have done? Sophia asked, her voice filled with regret. I didn't know him. Connection doesn't require familiarity, the figure said. A kind word, a simple acknowledgement, can be enough to strengthen a frayed thread. The vision shifted to show an alternate possibility. Sophia approached the man, offering him a smile and a few words of encouragement. His thread brightened, the light rippling outward to touch others. Later, the man called a family member he hadn't spoken to in years, beginning the process of mending a broken relationship. Sophia felt tears welling in her eyes. So much could have changed if I had just stopped. The past cannot be undone, the figure said. But the future is shaped by the choices you make now. Redemption is not about perfection. It is about persistence. The threads around them shimmered, their pulsing light filling Sophia with a sense of urgency and hope. She thought of the moments she had missed, the times she had chosen silence or inaction. But she also thought of the opportunities that lay ahead, the threads she could still mend, the ripples she could still create. How do I make it right? She asked, turning to the figure. By choosing love, the figure said. Not once, but repeatedly. Every moment offers the chance to strengthen the light, to repair what has been frayed. Sophia nodded, her heart steady with determination. She understood now that her life was not defined by her mistakes but by her willingness to learn and grow. The threads of redemption were hers to weave, and she was ready to begin. There is more to see, the figure said. But the truth is becoming clear. Your choices are not bound by what has been but by what you decide to create moving forward. The threads around them glowed brighter as the scene began to shift once more. Sophia felt the weight of her realizations settling into resolve, her heart open to the next part of her journey. The shifting threads faded into a softer glow, and Sophia found herself standing in a serene valley. The air was crisp, and the sky above was vast and endless, painted with hues of gold and lavender. The ground beneath her feet was covered in lush grass that sparkled as if dusted with starlight. The figure stood beside her, silent but ever-present. "What is this place?" Sophia asked, her voice steady but filled with curiosity. "This is the Valley of Legacy," the figure replied. "Here, the light you have created and nurtured is revealed, not just through your actions but through the lives you've touched." Sophia's breath caught as she looked ahead. Dotted throughout the valley were orbs of light, each glowing with a unique intensity and hue. They floated just above the ground, pulsating gently. The air around them hummed with an energy that felt alive. "These lights," Sophia said, stepping closer to one of the orbs. "What are they?" "They represent the impact of your choices," the figure said. "Each orb is a reflection of the lives you've influenced, the threads you've strengthened, and the love you've shared." Sophia approached the first orb. As she reached out to touch it, the air shimmered, and a vision unfolded before her. She saw herself years ago, sitting in the waiting room of a hospital. A woman next to her was visibly distressed, wringing her hands as tears streamed down her face. Sophia remembered the moment. The woman had been waiting for news about her son, who had been in a car accident. In the vision, Sophia leaned over and placed a hand on the woman's arm. "I'm so sorry," she had said softly. "Whatever happens, you're not alone." The woman had looked at her, startled, before nodding and letting out a shuddering breath. Sophia had sat with her for the next hour, offering quiet reassurance until the doctor arrived with news that her son would recover. As the vision faded, the orb's glow brightened, and Sophia saw ripples of light spreading outward. The woman's thread strengthened, and she went on to support her son through his recovery with renewed hope. Years later, her son became a mentor for at-risk youth, his light touching countless others. "This is what love creates," the figure said. "It is not bound by time or proximity. The light you share expands far beyond what you can see." Sophia moved to another orb, its light soft but steady. When she touched it, a new vision unfolded. This time, she saw her younger self standing in a crowded subway station. A young man nearby was struggling to carry several heavy bags, his face flushed with frustration. Sophia remembered the moment, how she had stepped forward without hesitation, offering to help him carry his bags to the platform. The vision played out as she remembered, but then it extended beyond her memory. The young man, feeling uplifted by her kindness, decided to pay it forward. He helped an elderly woman struggling with her groceries that evening, and she, in turn, baked cookies for her neighbor's sick child. The ripple continued, spreading outward to touch dozens of lives. Sophia's chest swelled with emotion. "I never thought something so small could mean so much." "Kindness is never small," the figure said. "Every act of love carries the potential to illuminate the darkest places." Sophia turned her attention to another orb, this one dim and fragile. As she touched it, the air shimmered with a new vision. She saw herself in a familiar scene, her argument with Emily years ago. The harsh words they had exchanged had left a rift between them, and Sophia had let days turn into weeks without trying to make amends. The vision shifted, showing Emily sitting in her room, her shoulders slumped as she stared at her phone. Her thread was faint, barely flickering, weighed down by the shadows of hurt and disappointment. Sophia's throat tightened. "I should have reached out sooner." "You still can," the figure said. "The light of connection remains, waiting for you to choose it." The vision extended, showing an alternate outcome. Sophia picked up the phone, calling Emily and apologizing for her words. The conversation was difficult but heartfelt, and their thread brightened as they began to rebuild their connection. Emily's light spread outward, touching her students, her friends, and eventually her own children. Sophia took a deep breath, her resolve growing. "I won't let that thread stay dim. I'll repair it. The orbs around her began to glow brighter, their collective light illuminating the valley. Sophia turned to the figure, her mind racing with the weight of what she had seen. So many moments, so many choices. How do we carry the responsibility of it all? By understanding that you are not alone, the figure said. The threads of existence are woven together. Each person contributes to the tapestry, and together, you create the light. Sophia nodded, her thoughts drifting to the lives she had touched and the lives that had touched hers. She thought of her daughters, her late husband, her friends, and even strangers she had encountered only briefly. Each connection, no matter how fleeting, had left its mark. She moved to another orb, its light vibrant and steady. When she touched it, a vision of Grace appeared. This time, Grace was an adult, standing in a hospital room with a patient. Her voice was calm and reassuring as she explained a complicated procedure, her tone filled with compassion. Sophia watched as the patient's thread brightened, their fear replaced by trust. The ripple spread to the patient's family, who left the hospital with a renewed sense of hope. Grace's actions were a reflection of the love and support Sophia had given her as a child. Your light continues through them, the figure said. The love you've shared becomes a legacy that endures. Sophia turned back to the valley, her gaze sweeping over the countless orbs of light. Each one represented a story, a connection, a choice that had left a lasting impact. She felt both humbled and empowered, knowing that her life had been part of something far greater than she had ever realized. How do I keep building this legacy? She asked, her voice steady. By choosing love in every moment, the figure said. Even when it is difficult, even when it feels small. The threads of light are woven through intention, and they are never beyond repair. Sophia nodded, her heart filled with determination. She understood now that her life was not defined by her mistakes, but by the love she chose to give and the connections she chose to nurture. There is more to see, the figure said. But the truth is clear. The legacy of light is not about perfection. It is about persistence. The valley began to glow brighter, the orbs of light merging into a single, radiant warmth. Sophia felt a pull toward the next part of her journey, her heart steady with purpose and anticipation. The glowing valley began to shift, the orbs of light merging into a radiant horizon that seemed to stretch into infinity. Sophia stood still, her heart steady as the warmth of the light enveloped her. The figure remained beside her, its presence steady, as though it were a guardian of this sacred place. This, the figure said, gesturing to the brilliance around them, is the culmination of all that you have seen. It is the light of creation, woven from every thread of love, every connection that has ever existed. Sophia's breath caught as the light pulsed gently, resonating with a rhythm that felt alive. It wasn't overwhelming but inviting, drawing her closer with a sense of profound belonging. She felt as though every part of her, her thoughts, her memories, her very soul, was part of this infinite light. Am I part of this? She asked, her voice trembling with awe. You always have been, the figure replied. Every thread you have strengthened, every choice rooted in love, has contributed to this light. It is not separate from you, it is you. Sophia stepped forward, and as she did, the light began to shift. Images formed within it, glowing softly like constellations in the night sky. She saw her daughters, Emily and Grace, laughing together as children. She saw her late husband, Mark, holding her hand on their wedding day. She saw the faces of friends and strangers she had encountered throughout her life, their threads shining brightly. These are the lives you have touched, the figure said. Each one carries the imprint of your love. Sophia's heart swelled with emotion. Even the small moments, she murmured. They mattered, the figure confirmed. And they will continue to ripple outward, long after your journey here. The light shifted again, and Sophia saw a new vision. This time, it was a stranger, a young woman sitting on a park bench, her shoulders slumped in despair. Sophia didn't recognize her, but as the scene unfolded, she saw herself walking by, offering the woman a kind word and a smile. The stranger's thread, dim and fragile, began to glow faintly, its light spreading outward. That was so small, Sophia said, her voice filled with wonder. I didn't even remember it. Love is never small, the figure said. Every act, no matter how brief or seemingly insignificant, carries the power to transform. The threads you strengthen become part of this infinite light. The vision faded, replaced by a new scene. Sophia saw herself as a child, sitting with her mother in their modest living room. Her mother was sewing a quilt, the pieces coming together in a patchwork of vibrant colors. Sophia remembered this moment clearly, how her mother had explained that every stitch mattered, that even the smallest piece was essential to the whole. It's like this, Sophia said, realization dawning. Our lives are like the quilt. Every choice, every connection, is a thread that adds to the design. Yes, the figure said, and the tapestry of existence is made beautiful by the love woven into it. Sophia turned to the figure, her chest filled with both awe and gratitude. But what about the mistakes, she asked. The times I let fear or anger guide me, the connections I let fray. Are those threads lost forever? No thread is ever truly lost, the figure said. They remain part of the tapestry, waiting to be mended. Redemption is always possible, and love is always within reach. Sophia nodded, her resolve growing. She thought of the moments she had missed, the opportunities she had let slip by. But she also thought of the threads she had strengthened, the love she had shared. She understood now that her life was not about perfection but about intention. The light around her began to pulse more brightly, and Sophia felt a pull deep within her. It wasn't a physical sensation but a call, a beckoning from the infinite light itself. She turned to the figure, her voice steady. "What happens now?" she asked. "You have seen the truth," the figure said. "You understand the power of your choices and the impact of your love. What happens next is up to you." Sophia felt a surge of determination. "I want to keep strengthening the threads," she said. "I want to repair what I've neglected and build a legacy of light." "Then carry this truth with you," the figure said. "Every moment is an opportunity. Every choice shapes the tapestry." The infinite light began to shift again, the images of the lives Sophia had touched fading into the horizon. She felt a deep sense of peace, but it wasn't a passive calm. It was an active, vibrant energy, urging her to move forward. She understood now that her journey was far from over. "You are part of something eternal," the figure said, its voice filled with warmth. "The light within you is infinite, and its reach is boundless. Walk your path with love, and the threads you weave will endure." Sophia nodded, her heart steady and her spirit unshakable. She was ready to take the next step, to carry the light she had seen into every corner of her life. The infinite light glowed brighter, filling her with purpose as the scene began to fade. She didn't know what awaited her, but she was ready, with open eyes, an open heart, and an unyielding commitment to love. Sophia opened her eyes to the soft hum of the hospital room. The sterile light above seemed dim compared to the brilliance she had just experienced, but her heart swelled with a warmth she could not describe. Emily and Grace were by her side, their faces streaked with tears of relief as they realized she was awake. "I'm here," Sophia whispered, her voice filled with a calm certainty. "And I have so much to tell you." In the days that followed, Sophia shared her experience, not just with her daughters but with everyone whose lives intertwined with hers. She spoke of the threads that connected them all, the power of every choice, and the light that each of them carried within. Her words inspired others to see their lives in a new way, to reach out, to repair, and to strengthen their connections. Sophia's journey through the light had changed her, but it also became a spark that ignited change in those around her. The ripples of her choices continued to spread, weaving into the infinite tapestry she had glimpsed. As she lived her days with love and intention, Sophia knew one truth above all: the light she carried would never fade, it would only grow.